Hello and welcome back to the Baltic Sea Security Conference. We already had two fascinating panels, one on defense aspects and one on cybersecurity aspects that matter to the Baltic Sea region. Now we are going to continue with matters of economic security and economic domain that are relevant to our region. And for this, I will give floor to Dr. Didzis Kļaviņš from the University of Latvia, who will moderate the session. And let me also know that he has already previously contributed to our efforts in researching this subject. And I think it will be a very interesting take on what is relevant in these matters today. So Dr. Kļaviņš, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Otto. So good afternoon. My name is Didzis Kļaviņš, and I'm senior researcher at the University of Latvia. Today, it's my great honor and, of course, privilege to moderate this panel on economic security. And first of all, I must re-emphasize and highlight that economic security, or as you know, of course, security per se, is of course a very complex concept with different layers, connotations, and components. And we can analyze security issues from, of course, international, regional perspective, what we will do today, but also, of course, from the nation state and from individual perspective. And this year has been really challenging year for all of us. There are so many restrictions to travel and so on. And during this session, or the goal of this session is to shed light on many aspects of economic security and in the Baltic Sea region. So we have four great speakers today. We have four great speakers today. The first speaker is Sigita Kavaliunaite from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She will be speaking under this name, Rytis Paulauskas, a good friend of mine. I know him very well. Greetings. I will start with you. The floor is yours. If you could give us your insight in economic security, and then I will introduce with the other speakers.
Thank you very much for inviting to this interesting conference and panel on economic security. I would like to share several insights, mainly focusing on energy security, because this aspect is quite important for Lithuania and other Baltic countries. So we have experienced already several decades of intra-regional cooperation within the region to counter several threats coming from our eastern neighbor. Energy security threats. So, and all this experience from Lithuanian perspective, we would like to evaluate as overall positive, because we see implementation of a number of successful projects such as Nordbalt, Litpoliink, GIPL, which are energy interconnections connecting Baltic states with neighboring countries. And that gave us more resilience and gave us more opportunity to counter enemies' attempts to use energy as a weapon. But at the same time, we see lack of coordinated approach in several cases, such as, for example, in the respect of Astravets nuclear power plant, which Lithuania considers as a geopolitical project. Also, regional LNG terminal project, which was initiated, discussed, but not implemented, and several other unsuccessful cases. So obviously, coordinated regional approach should be strengthened, and it should be strengthened by overcoming main challenges which were noticed on these unsuccessful cases. I'm talking about lack of political will, to carry out some regional projects to ensure atmosphere of mutual trust, which was lacking. Also very important to overcome dilemma short-term gains through competition versus long-term gains through cooperation. Another vulnerability is lack of systemic approach to analyzing and monitoring energy sector-related risks, as well as lack of effective decision-making, lack of adequate infrastructure for effective transfer of resources among regional partners, as well as protection and resilience of critical infrastructure on a regional level. So what could be done? Well, it seems that it could be useful to look for some facilitating factors, for some developments, for actors that could help us both in our efforts to strengthen economic security, energy security, as well as to somehow strengthen our intra-regional cooperation. And it's important in this respect to mention involvement or mediation of strong international actors as European Commission, United States, NATO, that have power and resources to exert influence and thus motivate closer cooperation. Also, in this relation, there are important recent initiatives, such as US initiative on partnership on transatlantic energy cooperation, so-called PTEC. Also, 3Cs initiative, which unites 12 European Union countries around and between 3Cs, Baltic, Black, and Adriatic. EU and NATO activities focused on building resilience, countering hybrid threats, and fostering EU-NATO cooperation. Very important is BEMIP initiative, Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan, which proved to be in many cases an effective tool to improve decision-making process, develop critical infrastructure, contribute to energy security through development of functioning and integrated internal energy market and elimination of energy islands. There are some recent good examples, involvement of international institutions such as European and NATO research and competence centers that support research analysis and crisis management exercises on regional level. In this relation, there should be mentioned two quite successful examples that took place last year. One is tabletop exercise Coherent Resilience 19, which exercised resilience of natural gas supply to Baltic states, and was jointly organized by European Commission's Joint Research Center, NATO Energy Security Center of Excellence, and also with participation of United States Naval Postgraduate School as evaluation team leader. And as a result of this exercise, which took longer than half a year, 30 recommendations for mitigating revealed vulnerabilities were produced, which is a very important input to regional security. Another important and successful event was production of research report Nuclear Energy in the Security and the Security Environment in the Era of Hybrid Threats. It was produced by 4 centers of excellence around the Baltic Sea. So NATO Energy Security Center of Excellence operating in Vilnius, NATO Strategic Communication Center operating in Riga, Cooperative Security Center of Excellence operating in Tallinn, and European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats operating in Helsinki. So these cooperative efforts were very useful, and we have excellent examination of risks stemming from the nuclear energy sector, and gives us better insight how to answer to the threats coming from Rosatom's projects current. including the one that is very neighboring to Lithuania and to Lithuanian capital. Also, quite important facilitating factors acquired thanks to intra-regional cooperation is profound experience within the region organizing measures on state and local levels, such as public consultations on new regional security projects, education of society about resilience, how to resist manipulation techniques, also how to attract skilled professionals during implementation of energy security projects. So now we have something like a question or task, how we could somehow streamline all these experiences, all new initiatives, accumulated funds, human resources towards our region's economic security. How could we now, on the basis of that, initiate and implement new projects and practices with regional focus? On the other hand, this is the question of operationalization of mentioned facilitating factors on regional level. I want to provide one example. We have now ongoing expert discourse related to possibilities of modernization of NATO's infrastructure with EU funds by expansion Central Europe pipeline system, which is part of NATO's pipeline system to Eastern flank countries. And it is seen as an opportunity to improve energy security for NATO's Eastern flank and for Europe. So in this respect, enhanced Baltic regional cooperation maybe could contribute to the viability of this project, for example, by exploring options of its commercialization during peacetime. So when we are talking about these options, there is again a question if we have an appropriate regional format or mechanism in place to ensure streamlining of all those initiatives, all those accumulated funds, all human resources, expertise, to make it more focused and avoid unnecessary competition between among the partners of the region. Well, what could be helpful in this respect? I think it might be helpful to examine more deeply best practices and lessons learned from BEMIP experience, from Baltic Energy Market Integration Plan experience. And it could bring us better understanding of current situation, give us better situational awareness and analysis, how to ensure sufficient level of ensuring political will to carry further regional project, to initiate new maybe regional projects based on those possibilities that PTEC 3Cs initiative is bringing, because a lot of funds are being accumulated in those and a lot of resources are being accumulated in those funds, and sometimes it's better to join our efforts rather to go each alone. Also, it's important how to ensure a sufficient level to find ways to somehow overcome this dilemma, how short-term gains through competition versus long-term gains through regional cooperation. Also, if we could use those initiatives for somehow establishing systemic approach to analyzing, monitoring risks on a regular basis on regional level, and to somehow establish effective decision-making process. Also, how we can motivate to apply relevant measures on state and local level, how we can better organize public consultations concerning current threats, and motivating them to carry out regional security projects, how we can educate society about resilience, how to attract skilled professionals. So these are my main insights. So thanks again for your attention and possibility to participate. And I'll be happy to contribute further if necessary. Thank you.
Thanks, Sigita. A very nice, very interesting insight in energy security and challenges. I will come back with the questions, and I believe our colleagues will also address several of what you mentioned topics, issues. Before I give word Aivar Jaeski, who is well-known expert from Estonia, and before I give word to Marius Laurinavičius from the Vilnius Institute for Policy Analysis, I would like to ask the organizers to put the video presentation from Roger Robinson, who is CEO from RVWR Advisory from the United States, and he is also a chairman and co-founder of the Prague Security Studies Institute. And I believe many of you know that Roger Robinson has a very extensive experience in China's politics, including, of course, economic security and foreign policy. So unfortunately, he couldn't be here with us online. He, as far as I know, he has prepared a video presentation for all of us. Okay, while we are waiting, or I would suggest that if there are some technical issues, I would. Otto, do you want to say something?
Yes, so please, could you please continue with other speakers, and we'll try to get the address of Roger back after that.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yes, so I would like to give the next speaker is Aivar Jaeski, and he is, I would say, I think there's no need to introduce you, because I think all of us know you very well as an expert in not only in transportation but also focusing on the regional issues. And at the moment you work for the RB Rail AS and Estonia, but of course you have a long-standing experience in security issues. Yes, the floor is yours. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for such a kind words. Thank you for introduction. It's a great pleasure to be in such kind of conference and speak with such a good audience and speakers. Yes, I have some experience from security point of view, and today I'm working in transportation construction sector. So I have insight from both from defense and also from business sector today. So I'm happy to share some of my thoughts. And I'm not focusing only to the transportation issues, but I'm trying to cover the aspect a little bit wider from Baltic perspective, because I believe we are living right now in very interesting moment, because the economical model what we have today, it becoming slowly changed, and according this three-sector model of economics, what was created by Alan Fisher, Colin Clark, and Jean Forstier, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they are belonging to the highly developed countries, upper class, because we are main income for the state budget comes from the third sector, what provides services including retail, tourism, banking, entertainment, and IT sector. And this approach contradicting the security aspect of the state, because the model first sector deals with agriculture, fishing, mining, and second sector what dealing with manufacturing, production of cars, food, and clothes. They are very important from state self-sustainment and resilient point of view. when there is no agriculture, there is no food, and there is without manufacturing there is no clothes. So as we saw, you can argue that today we are well connected and everything is interlinked, and we cannot need such kind of basic sectors. We can support each other, and there is no requirement for the self-sustainability. But as we saw already during the beginning of this pandemic, it was required just one state to close the borders, and then the goods and also people's where the transport of goods and people to the country in and out was hampered. So the connections are important, but are we connected well enough to be self-sustainable and resilient? So taking again the example from this pandemic, yes, we had two sectors already well developed, like naval sector, where Tallink ships were bringing people home, and also Air Baltic, our air sector is pretty well developed when transport was also provided in peak necessity time period. But where are the shortfalls? I would say we still have a pretty poor road network, and especially looking our geographical positions, is Via Baltica, what we are proud of this, still has time to time only 2 lanes, and within this 29 years of independence, we haven't appropriately managed to use this possible aid what the European Union has available. And I would say that here is a good example we have is from Poland, 2004, when we all became members of European Union. The only country where the visible improvement of the road network took place, it was Poland. I was traveling quite often between Europe, Brussels and Estonia, and it was pretty tough to pass Poland, but year by year it is improved. And today, last time when I traveled 2012, you can use highway direct from Berlin to Warsaw, and it's very comfortable. So there is a possibility to improve the road network. And second area where we need improvement, it's our rail network, because even today, if you look at the map of the railroad, you can see that Europe is well connected with 14 35mm gauge, and it's functioning and working. And we in Baltics, we are using 15-20mm gauge, and we are still very well connected to the eastern market. So all our railway market, railway infrastructure is linked to the east. And within this 29 years of independence, we still miss this north and south link, and I think this is a key aspect what needs to be improved. And why I'm talking about those infrastructures so much, because by education I'm logistical engineers, and I strongly believe that if the country wants economy to bloom, then the bloodstream of the economy are the logistical infrastructures, and those are railroads, those are roads, those are harbors, those are airports. So in order state wants to have those good economy, he has to invest to those infrastructure establishment, and also to the signaling equipment. And today the key word is of course IT and cyber connections. So this is area what is very poorly regulated today. There is a very poor legal framework, and in order to improve, there is a requirement of cooperation. And as Sigita told, this cooperation is between the countries is one of the key aspects, not only in defense aspect, but also from economical perspective. And I also want to highlight that in order to be better in crisis situations, we have especially to have this economical resilience. We have to have this situational awareness, what also Sigita mentioned, and it is a state responsibility, and to know what is going on, what's happening. The understanding and situational awareness is very important. Then second, I would say that it is crucial to establish minimum requirements for the economical security. I want to emphasize there is required to have minimum requirement established for supply services and also to supplies. I mean, there is requirement to calculate how much corn we have to have in order to have certain amount of self-sustainability, how much water, pure water, fuel, medical equipment today, very key word. We know what happens with this protection gears during the beginning of the crisis. So those criteria needs to establish them, and to establish those criteria, I think in Baltics, at least I know in Estonia, we are lacking such kind of capability like civil defense, and I think there should start negotiation or discussion again how strong civil defense capability we re-establish, how much we cooperate internally in a state, between state institutions, this capability of civil defense. And I know that as an ex-military officer, how strongly military has been kept away from civil crisis. But today's world is becoming more and more interconnected. So sometimes you need manpower, you need help from also from those institutions. So how we organize our protection of our civil population, this topic needs to be raised again. And of course, there is a requirement to consider how we protect our life importance installations. Quite often they are privately owned, but they are also part of the economical establishment. And last but not least, there is lots of proposal and again, cooperation with our allies, and the cooperation should be not the word, should be also the development of the interoperability skills. I know that this has been very popular word in NATO, interoperability, but it should not stay as a word. It also should come to the civilian life, and the application or needs to be also established by civilian structures. And last, now it's last, I visit Singapore, and they have very nice slogan that taking account the environment where we are living, they are trying to build a smart nation. the smart nation is something what we have to also consider, and it's very simple: invest into the education. In all the sectors, invest into the education. That's a way out. So I will stop here and happy to answer all the questions.
Thank you, Aivar. Very good insight. Very good insight. I really enjoy that you are covering not only these challenges, but also highlight what could be the opportunities, and that's what if you remember in 1940s, and at least from the books, Sir Winston Churchill said that never let a good crisis go to waste. And I will come back to this this topic because I think it's very important when we talk about the economic security in the Baltic Sea region. It's important to not only talk about these challenges what we are facing on a daily basis, but it's important to look what are the ways how we can foster and strengthen our collaboration. What are really actual steps which we need to take first. But thank you. But I will come back to the QA part. Will follow after 4 presenters will give their insight. Before Aivar's presentation, I introduced Roger Robinson. We had some difficulties, technical, but now as I understand, we are able to share his presentation.
Greetings. My name is Roger Robinson. I want to thank Olevs and the other organizers for the opportunity to join you today to talk about the economic and financial security dimensions of the threat that faces the Baltic nations and Europe more broadly, not to mention the transatlantic relationship. I have quite a lot of experience on the Soviet Union then and Russia now side of things, but over the past 15, 20 years, my focus has increasingly turned, not surprisingly, to China. And I want to talk a little bit about the use by these leading adversaries of the West of Western and US in particular capital markets, that is our stock and bond markets. It turns out that the United States is probably a principal, if not the principal dollar funder of the Chinese Communist Party, for example. It is also home to at least 8 US sanctioned Russian companies, surprisingly, that are in the portfolios of many millions of unwitting American investors. So it's not just a China problem, to a much lesser extent, I will say, that it's Russia as well. In the case of China, however, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, even multi-trillion-dollar sums over the past several years in terms of the kind of money, dollars that they've been able to attract through debt and equity offerings in our capital markets, as well as trading in index funds and a host of other investment vehicles. And as I say, it's not an exaggeration to suggest that there are tens of millions of Americans that are holding not just Chinese and Russian companies, but the wrong sorts of such companies. Now, this is also true of Europe, whether it's you're talking about the London, Frankfurt, Milan, Paris exchanges. All of them are suffering from the same circumstance, which is decades of the absence of any kind of security-minded and human rights-minded due diligence. That is, trying to understand who these Chinese and Russian companies are in our various markets, in the capital markets area, as well as their network of subsidiaries. What kind of track record of abuses might they have? Are they connected to the Russian and Chinese militaries? Are the security services? have they been implicated in human rights abuses, including equipping concentration camps in Xinjiang, China, that's holding over 1 million Uyghurs and other religious minorities? These are pressing questions, it turns out, and they've seen a good deal of the light of day in the United States, really for the first time, starting in March of 2019, when we started to release extensive research on this subject, which we had accumulated over the previous 3 or 4 years. That said, there have been a number of actions taken that have actually put the focus at the presidential level in the United States on these types of issues. Chinese companies, for example, were going to be admitted into the federal thrift savings plan, the retirement system of some 5.7 million federal employees, including our military. They would be holding not just Chinese companies, but bad actors, as we say, folks that companies that are associated with the People's Liberation Army, advanced weapons manufacturers, companies that are building and militarizing the islands in the South China Sea, those implicated in the kind of police state surveillance system that's been established by China, not to mention the concentration camps in Xinjiang and social credit scoring, other means by which the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party in particular takes control of its people. In the case of Russia, it's companies that were implicated in the 2014 invasion of Ukraine and who've been engaged in other security-related abuses around the world in such a way as to be sanctioned by the Office of Foreign Asset Control of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. So it's one thing to be holding the companies of leading adversaries. That's a kind of sporty proposition to begin with, because they are all able to be pressed into service by the state for various nefarious activities, whether it's espionage or being pressed into strategic objectives of their governments. After all, these companies are almost entirely state-owned or controlled. But to make matters worse, as I say, when you really do the analysis and the homework, you find that they are very, oftentimes very implicated in a host of national security and human rights wrongdoing. And that calls for special treatment. And the President of the United States, for example, decided to prohibit Chinese companies from being included in the federal thrift savings plan within 2 weeks of it being implemented. So it took 1.5 years of steady effort on the part of some of us to persuade the White House that this is the right thing to do. At the end of the day, that was a successful effort. And indeed, this administration has been trying to exclude the wrong sorts of Chinese companies, or any Chinese companies, from being part of federal sponsored pension plans, for example. So that's one concrete case where an intervention was made. More recently, there was an executive order by the president that called upon U.S. investors, whether they be individual or institutional, to be prohibited from holding the stock and bonds of those Chinese companies that appear on an official list of the Department of Defense because of their PLA, People's Liberation Army affiliations, the so-called Pentagon PLA list, as I affectionately refer to it. And this was a big step. It was the first time in the history of the United States, to at least my knowledge, when we used capital market sanctions. This is a very potent lever, both toward China and Russia, that's never seen the light of day. And I dare say that the same kind of problems that we've been afflicted with are also, as I said, present in Europe. For example, there's not one Chinese company that's compliant with US federal securities laws. They don't submit to federal government audits, for example, of their financials. In fact, they don't disclose their financials at all, which are regarded as state secrets. American companies could never get away with this kind of thing, so that China is actually receiving preferential treatment to their American corporate counterparts. I suspect the same is true in Europe, whereby federal regulators that are trying to engage in the protection of European investors through a host of regulatory measures are seeing the same kind of abuse or problems where China is not willing to play by the rules. It's just that simple. Not to mention some of these bad actors, because on the corporate side, the diligence, the kind of national security, human rights scrutiny that's required to stop this kind of thing has been notably absent, and it's a big problem. So I would really say that this is an area that we're particularly interested in focusing on to a greater extent, and I would hope that this kind of new focus will contribute to the tools available to the West to staunch the wrong sorts of power projection by China and Russia in your region and beyond. With that, I think I'll close out, and thank you again for the opportunity to participate. Bye now.
Thank you so much, Roger. Very interesting insight indeed. As we don't have much time, please let me introduce you to Marius Laurinavičius from the Vilnius Institute for Policy Analysis, who will also, of course, share his insight in our region. Marius, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for having me here. It's an honor to be a speaker at for such a distinguished audience at such an important conference. And to start with, I would like to say that I'm fully aware of the concept of former US Defense Secretary James Mattis, who once said that PowerPoint makes you stupid, but still it will help me to make my point and for the audience to remember something, so I will try to use video. So I hope you see it. Do you?
Yes, I see.
Okay.
Yes.
So, so I will try to go, well, first of all, my presentation will be like a follow-up of the video which we have seen, but I will go even further beyond conventional wisdom, because I will speak about the threat which poses an economic relations and business as such pose a threat to Baltic states and generally. Aivar just talked about the opportunities which are provided by the cooperations with allies, but when we speak about the adversaries, and I will speak about the two main adversaries, it's much more about threats than about the opportunities. And we still think that it's an opportunity. So do you see the next slide? Okay. So at the very beginning, I would like to remind you that the debate about the relationship between economic interdependence and military conflict is one of the oldest in the field of international relations, but I will not focus on the military conflict, and I will not go further into this debate, because There are scholars who say that this economic interdependence reduces the possibility of any military conflict. The others say that it's vice versa. It's not so important for me, but what's really important for me that in this global world, and globalization made a real change here, we even refuse to think about the threats which brings just an economic cooperation as such and business as such. And I really think that it's a mistake and we should think about that. And talking about that, first of all, I would like to remind you that at least when we talk about Russia, it's about Russian strategic thinking. It's been since 1969, and I will not read through my slides because you see them and you can do it yourself. But what I want to stress that since 1969, business as such is integrated part of Russian intelligence. It was invented by General Pitovranov and adopted by former secretary of Communist Party and before that head of KGB Andropov. And since then, since 1969, business is an integrated part of Russian intelligence. And it's really important to remember that when doing business with Russia. And what's really interesting is that at the end of the Cold War, we, well, not we, but the West has learned this lesson, and they really understood that business which is offered by Russia, or at that time by the Soviet Union, is determined to sell a rope that could hang America. In this case, it's a quotation from Heritage Foundation, but generally speaking, it's like they are really offering us a rope that could hang us. And if somebody wants to argue that, well, why should we think about what has happened during the Cold War, I would say that, well, I consider myself a Russian expert. I've been working on Russia for almost 30 years already. And I would say that even when we talk about this hybrid warfare, about all this information warfare, everything we are talking now about is nothing new. It's the same strategies which were invented by KGB and used during the Cold War. So this slide is just an opportunity to show you that it's not like my own idea that Russia is using the same strategy and the same ideas when they are doing business with the West. Here is a quotation by Mark Galeotti, one of the famous Russian experts in the West. So what we face now, we're also facing the same situation when business is used as a part of intelligence. And how it works again, it's already well researched, and there are many works presented on that. But here I would like to use a quotation from Kremlin's playbook, quite a famous work by CSIS, and they made a huge research which was basically focused on our region. That's why I have chosen this one. And they explained how it works now. that Russia is using business people, other influential people, which are working on their own interests, but at the same time, they are working on Russian interests. But it's not just Russia. And I really want to support everything which was said by Roger, but to add to them, to the things which were already said, I would like to use 2 examples of China's playbook. The first one is a well-known case of Canada and Canada's relations to China. And this is very important to understand that it's not just some economic conflict or conflict between China and Canada. It's a kind of modus operandi of China. And it's very important to understand that when we are doing business with China, we are risking not just in terms of economy, we're risking in terms of criminal activities, because the daughter of Huawei's, the founder of Huawei's, was arrested because of charges on fraud. It's a criminal activity, and because of that, 2 Canadian citizens were kidnapped in China, and in addition to that, Canada has a very big conflict, economical conflict with China. So it's like a situation when you are doing with business with somebody, and you are losing a possibility even to use your own laws when it concerns this business with China. The second example from China's playbook is, here is a big long quotation from Financial Times, a recent one. All who want to, they can read it thoroughly and see, but I will explain the situation in terms of, again, economic cooperation with China, because it's the best example what threat it poses, because Australia, in this case it's Australia built its own success on cooperation with China. And we should admit that, well, everyone knows that. But when they did that, and when they started being, I would say, dependent on China, China started to dictate not only their foreign policy, but they are starting to dictate their own internal policy. Like they are asking to do something about their think tanks, about their free speech laws, about everything. So we should have in mind that when we expanding our cooperation with our adversaries, and countries like China and Russia, they use our dependence and these particular economic relations they use for their own expansionist policy. And this is very important. So for me, I have just a conclusion that Russia and China have blood lines between legitimate economic activity, corruption, and financial crimes, between cooperation and influence, between economy and weapons, and they wage which they wage war against the West. Therefore, the level of, and that's for me the most important thing, is therefore the level of the economic relations with Russia and China is directly proportional to Kremlin's and Chinese penetration to a level of threat to the national security. And my recommendations, I have two recommendations. First of all, we should speak about that. So this is about raising awareness, because we still think that business with Russia and China is a kind of the same business with our allies like United States, Germany, or any other country. It's not the same. It's completely different. And the second recommendation is gradual decrease of economic cooperation with Russia and China until the moment they will join or they will share our values and at least our rules of the game. So these would be my recommendations, thinking about our own security. Today we're talking about our Baltic Sea security. So this is very important, because it's not just Russia, it's also China. And even these formats like 16+1, to my mind, poses a threat, not provide an opportunity for us. There I will stop and will be ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Marius. Thank you. Very interesting insight, really. The main problem for us is that we have just 3 minutes. I have plenty of questions for all of you, but the audience, listeners are our priority. So let me give you 2 questions, and if you could answer very briefly, I would really appreciate. The first question is from on behalf of the Warsaw Institute in Poland. And the question is how we could strengthen NATO cooperation when it comes to hybrid threats. And the second question is, I believe this could be for Aivar, is how we could use 3 Cs initiative to improve our transport connections in Europe. And it's this question is from Tomasz Kijewski. Who wants to be first, Sigita or Aivar or Marius?
No, I can start. I think there has been quite a lot of discussion about China, and I just want to make my comment that we should not overestimate the power of China, because the economies are interlinked, and the same as China is influencing us, we are influencing China as well. I mean, can you believe if we don't buy stuff from China, and what kind of socio-economical results it can bring, because China lacks the natural raw materials and has a large labor force. And we have to learn from Japan, who is living close to China and is not dependent with China at all. And now when we are coming, how we can deal with our better with our transportation sector, it's very simple. We should start to deal with things. We have to tackle the problems and start really not to build working groups who are endlessly discussing about interoperability. We have to implement interoperability. We have to establish bodies who are really implementing those tasks and in real matter, because the bodies who are implementing the cooperations are more important than working groups who are discussing about interoperability. And this activity or actions are the important point of cooperation. So I stop here.
Thanks, Aivar. Sigita, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just several words. Well, concerning this economic activity, which today in the language of hybrid threats is called like priming activity, when foreign adversaries exert their influence in secret way, and it's really difficult to find where is the line of what is proper and what is improper. Well, first of all, I want to say that we have this established, well, Lithuania is a member, and all our countries, I think, is a member of Center of Excellence for Hybrid Threats, and we have more better in higher scale use the expertise in finding where is those lines is where we see this priming activity or just ordinary business, how we can define where is already dangerous beginning or is just simple business. And other aspect is that some countries already have good experience, and it was mentioned Australia. Australia is gathering experience already several decades because of its close proximity to China. So there are interesting examples of their findings, how they deal with it. They do not see, they have established wider response. They put it in social policy, not only national security policy, but a whole social policy. So for us, it's very interesting experience, and the more we know, the better we can respond to those threats. And the third that was also mentioned is to exercise interoperability. We had this that I mentioned, exercise Coherent Resilience 19. Now, next year, we are also planning to exercise Coherence Resilience 21 for Baltic states, and it will take also this aspect, exercising resilience for energy sector against hybrid threats. So it will combine different aspects, including disinformation threats with the purpose to create panic from the close proximity of nuclear power plant, also cybersecurity aspects, many aspects will be put. So not countries from Baltic states, not experts from Baltic states, but also surrounding countries are invited also. We invited NATO postgraduate school, US postgraduate school experts who have good skills in providing those exercises. Also, European Center, European Commission's GRC Joint Research Center will participate, Centers of Excellence. So all those exercises, they bring more understanding, deep understanding, how to better meet those, mitigate challenges and overcome those threats, and maybe build better interoperability practices. Yeah, better mode the knowledge how to do it.
Sigita, big thanks. We have a big time pressure. We have burned already 5 minutes from a break, and but then Marius, would you like to say some few words before we go into break?
No, thanks. I think I will not step into this discussion. I just want to say that from my perspective, I'm really convinced that because because it was a question about hybrid threats. So we in this region, in the Baltic region, we are much more aware about the other ways of hybrid threats to our countries, let's say disinformation and others. So for me, this economical part of hybrid threats is the biggest for the Baltic states. That's why I'm really emphasizing this.
Thanks, Sigita, thanks Aivar, thanks Marius, and of course thank you Roger and organizers. And it was a big pleasure. Unfortunately, we don't have much time next time, or I hope tete-a-tete or in any other events in real life. Big thanks, really interesting ideas. Have many questions, but then next time I will ask you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear panelists. Thank you very much, Dr. Kļaviņš. We will continue with societal security after the break.